The harsh ring of Marco Valentini's phone pierced the silence of his brownstone residence. At exactly 2:17 in the morning, he groaned, reaching across the wide bed to silence the intrusion. The room around him was all dark wood and leather, heavy curtains blocking out the Boston night. As a man who handled delicate operations across the city, late-night calls weren't unusual. Associates with urgent matters, partners from overseas forgetting time zones, or problems that required his immediate attention. What was unusual was the unfamiliar number illuminating his screen. "Valentini," he answered, his voice rough with sleep, carrying the weight of a man accustomed to being obeyed. The sound that greeted him wasn't an associate or partner. It was unmistakably a child's terrified sobbing. "Mom won't wake up," a small trembling voice whispered between sobs. "I tried everything. She's breathing funny. Please help us." Marco sat up immediately, fully alert. His instincts, honed by years of navigating dangerous situations, kicked in without hesitation. "Who is this? Who am I speaking with?" "Emma," the child whispered. "Emma Taylor. I'm 8. Mom said if there's ever an emergency and she can't help, I should call Daddy." "Are you my daddy?" Marco's mind raced. This wasn't his child. He had none. This was clearly a wrong number. A desperate child who had misdialed her father's number in a moment of panic. "No, Emma, I'm not your dad," Marco said gently, his voice losing its edge. "But I want to help. Is your mom sick? Have you called 911? The little girl's sobs intensified. "Mom said never call 911 unless she says so. They'll take me away if I do it wrong. I tried calling Daddy, but you answered. Please, can you help us? Mom won't wake up and I'm scared." Marco was already out of bed, pulling on dark jeans and a sweater. His rational mind told him to instruct the child to hang up and call emergency services. This wasn't his problem. He had important meetings scheduled, obligations that couldn't be delayed. But something in the child's voice, the raw fear and desperate hope, cut through his practiced detachment. "Where are you, Emma? Can you tell me your address?" he asked, grabbing his keys from the dresser. Between hiccuping sobs, Emma gave an address in Dorchester, a working-class neighborhood about 20 minutes from Marco's residence in the North End. As he moved through the dimly lit hallway, past old family photographs and religious icons on the walls, Marco kept the frightened child on the line. "I'm coming to help, Emma. Stay on the phone with me. Can you unlock the door for me when I arrive?" "Mom says never open the door for strangers," Emma replied, her voice tiny with uncertainty. "That's a smart rule," Marco agreed, his footsteps echoing as he descended the stairs. "When I get there, I'll call your name through the door, and you can ask me questions to make sure I'm the person you talk to on the phone. How does that sound?" "Okay," Emma agreed. "Please hurry. Mom's breathing sounds weird." Marco broke several speed limits as he drove through Boston's empty streets, his black Alfa Romeo moving through the darkness like a shadow. The child's worried voice guided him through his car's system. He learned that Emma's mother, Olivia Taylor, was 32, worked 2 jobs, and had been feeling sick for a few days, but couldn't afford to miss work. Emma had woken up thirsty, found her mother unresponsive on the couch, and tried everything she could think of to wake her before calling what she thought was her father's number. The address led him to a modest apartment building with peeling paint and security doors that had seen better days. Marco found apartment 3B and knocked softly. "Emma, it's Marco Valentini, the man from the phone. I'm here to help you and your mom." He heard small footsteps approach the door. "What's my name?" came a cautious voice. "Emma Taylor. You're 8 years old and your mom's name is Olivia," Marco answered patiently, his voice carrying the steady calm that made people trust him even in crisis. After a moment's hesitation, the locks clicked and the door opened to reveal a small girl with tangled blonde hair and frightened blue eyes, clutching a worn teddy bear. Behind her, Marco could see a small, sparsely furnished apartment and a woman slumped on a threadbare couch, her breathing labored. Marco approached Olivia cautiously. Even in her unconscious state, he could see she was beautiful. Dark hair spilling across the couch cushions, delicate features flushed with fever. He placed a hand on her forehead and felt the burning heat of a dangerous fever. "Emma, your mom is very sick. We need to get her to a hospital, Marco said firmly, already reaching for his phone. No, Emma cried, grabbing his arm. Mom said no hospitals. We can't afford it. Last time she was sick, the bills made her cry for weeks. Marco hesitated, his finger hovering over the screen. He looked at Olivia's flushed face, then at Emma's terrified expression. Making a swift decision, he pocketed his phone and gently lifted Olivia from the couch. She was alarmingly light in his arms. Emma, get your mom's purse and her ID. We're going to Massachusetts General. I know people there. It will be okay. 15 minutes later, Marco was striding through the emergency room doors with Olivia in his arms, Emma hurrying alongside, clutching her teddy bear in her mother's purse. His name, spoken quietly to the right person, instantly opened doors despite the unusual hour. Olivia was quickly admitted, diagnosed with severe pneumonia and dangerous dehydration. If you'd waited until morning, she might not have made it, the doctor told Marco privately. She's severely run down, malnourished, and has clearly been pushing through this illness for days. Marco nodded grimly, his jaw tight. While medical staff attended to Olivia, he sat with Emma in the waiting room. The little girl eventually fell asleep against his arm, her small body finally relaxing after the terror of the night. He studied her face, wondering about the father she had tried to call, the man who should have answered instead of him. Hours passed. Marco sent a brief message to his second-in-command, postponing morning obligations. When a nurse finally approached to inform him that Olivia was stabilized and asking for her daughter, Marco carefully lifted the sleeping Emma and carried her to her mother's room. Olivia Taylor's eyes widened in confusion when she saw a strange man carrying her child. Despite her weakness, she immediately tried to sit up, protective instincts overriding her illness. "Who are you? Where am I?" she demanded, her voice hoarse but fierce. "Mom!" Emma woke and scrambled from Marco's arms onto the hospital bed. "This is Marco. I tried to call Daddy when you wouldn't wake up, but I guess I got the number wrong. Marco came to help us." Olivia's confused gaze met Marco's. In those few seconds of eye contact, Marco saw pride, fear, and fierce independence, warring with gratitude and embarrassment. "I'm Marco Valentini," he said simply, his voice low and even. "Your daughter called my phone by accident. She was very worried about you." "I'm so sorry," Olivia whispered, her cheeks flushing with more than fever. "Emma knows her father's number for emergencies, but I pressed the buttons wrong," Emma finished, cuddling close to her mother. "Marco helped us, Mom. He carried you to his car and brought us here and made the doctors help right away." Olivia looked around, noticing the private room, the top-tier care she was clearly receiving. Her eyes narrowed with understanding and concern. "I can't afford this," she whispered. "It's handled," Marco said quietly, his expression giving nothing away. "I don't accept charity, Mr. Valentini," Olivia replied, her voice gaining strength despite her weakened state. Marco studied her for a moment, admiring her spirit even as he recognized the stubborn pride that had likely kept her working through an illness that had nearly killed her. "Consider it a favor to Emma," he suggested. "She's quite persuasive." As dawn broke over Boston, casting golden light through the hospital window, Olivia's strength began to fade again. The doctor insisted she needed rest. Marco prepared to leave, having fulfilled his unexpected role, but paused at the door. "I should go. You need to rest, and I have—" he began. "Stay," Olivia whispered, surprising herself as much as him. "Just for a little while. Emma trusts you, and I'd like to properly thank the man who saved my life." Their eyes met across the room and something unexpected passed between them. A connection neither had anticipated, forged in the crucible of a wrong number and a night of crisis. Against every habit of his carefully controlled life, Marco found himself walking back toward the hospital bed and taking the chair beside it. "I'll stay," he said simply. 3 days after that fateful night, Olivia Taylor was discharged from Massachusetts General Hospital with strict orders to rest for at least 2 weeks. Marco Valentini had visited daily, bringing simple flowers to brighten the sterile room and age-appropriate books for Emma, who had taken to him with the uncomplicated affection children sometimes bestow on adults who enter their lives in moments of crisis. During those brief hospital visits, Marco and Olivia had exchanged the basics of their lives. His rise from Brooklyn roots, now overseeing various operations across the city. Her struggle as a single mother, working as an administrative assistant by day and remote customer service representative by night to make ends meet after her ex-husband Scott had abandoned them 2 years ago. What Marco hadn't told her was that he'd instructed one of his most trusted associates to look into Scott Taylor's whereabouts, disturbed by Emma's inability to reach her father during an emergency. The report, which had arrived through secure channels that morning, revealed that Scott Taylor had remarried 6 months ago and moved to Seattle with his new wife, changing his phone number without providing the update to his daughter. Standing in Olivia's modest apartment, Marco surveyed the space with observant eyes. What had seemed merely sparse in the panic of that first night now revealed itself as a home maintained with painstaking care despite limited resources. The furniture was worn but immaculately clean, family photos carefully arranged, and Emma's artwork prominently displayed. A small desk in the corner held stacks of paperwork and bills with past due notices that Olivia had hastily tried to hide when they arrived. "You really don't have to stay," Olivia said, settling carefully onto the couch where Marco had found her unconscious just days before. "We've imposed on you enough." "It's no imposition," Marco replied, setting down bags of groceries he'd brought. He'd noticed the nearly empty refrigerator during their first encounter. "Emma is showing me her rock collection in her room, and I promised her I'd make my famous pancakes for dinner." "Pancakes for dinner?" Olivia raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing at her lips, despite her clear discomfort with accepting help. "Breakfast for dinner is a time-honored tradition," Marco insisted with quiet seriousness. "Besides, pancakes are literally the only thing I can cook without setting off smoke detectors." That earned him a genuine laugh, followed immediately by Olivia's wince of pain as her recovering lungs protested. "Easy," Marco cautioned, moving to pour her a glass of water. Their fingers brushed as he handed it to her, and both pretended not to notice the small current that passed between them. As Marco busied himself in the kitchen, Olivia watched him with undisguised curiosity. In his dark jeans and simple sweater, he looked nothing like the figure whose name was occasionally whispered in certain circles. Here in her humble kitchen, sorting through mismatched utensils and humming off-key, he seemed almost ordinary, if one could ignore the expensive watch and the unmistakable air of confidence that came from never questioning one's authority. "Why are you really here, Marco?" Olivia asked suddenly. "Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for everything you've done, but men like you don't usually spend their free time helping strangers, especially not strangers from this neighborhood." Marco paused, a mixing bowl in hand. The question deserved honesty. "I'm still trying to figure that out myself," he admitted. "Something about that night, Emma's voice on the phone, finding you so ill, it shook me. Made me realize how isolated I've become in my own world." He set down the bowl and leaned against the counter. "I have 100 numbers in my phone, but at 2 in the morning, not one of them would have done what I did for a child they didn't know. What does that say about the life I've built?" Olivia's expression softened. "It says you were exactly the right wrong number that night." Their conversation was interrupted by Emma bounding into the room, hands full of colorful rocks that she insisted Marco examine immediately. The evening unfolded with surprising ease. Pancake dinner, Emma's animated stories about school, and Olivia's gradual relaxation as she accepted that Marco's presence came without strings attached. After Emma was tucked into bed, Marco and Olivia settled at her small kitchen table with the cups of tea. In the quiet intimacy of the apartment, Marco found himself sharing things he rarely discussed. His childhood in Brooklyn with parents who valued strength over sentiment, the loneliness that came with his position, his recent questioning of what it all meant. "I have everything I thought I wanted," he confessed. "And most days I feel nothing at all." "I can't imagine having everything and still being unhappy," Olivia said without judgment. "But I guess we all get trapped in our own patterns." "What's yours?" Marco asked. Olivia traced the rim of her mug, considering. "Pride," she finally said. "I'm so determined to make it on my own that I refuse help even when I desperately need it. It nearly killed me last week." The honesty between them was as unexpected as it was refreshing. By the time Marco left that night, something had shifted between them. The beginnings of a connection that defied their different worlds. Over the next 2 weeks, as Olivia recovered her strength, Marco became a regular presence in their lives. He arranged for grocery deliveries, helped Emma with her math homework, and even made quiet arrangements to ensure Olivia's jobs would be waiting when she recovered. Each visit deepened their connection, despite Olivia's occasional protests about charity. "We're not charity," Marco insisted one evening as they washed dishes side by side after dinner. Emma engrossed in a new book in the living room. "Is that what we are, friends?" "Friends?" Olivia asked, handing him a plate to dry. "I'd like to think so," Marco replied, their eyes meeting. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. The ringing of Marco's phone shattered the moment. Checking the screen, his expression shifted. "I need to take this. It's Tokyo." While Marco stepped outside to take the call, Olivia finished the dishes, her mind racing. She'd been fighting her growing attraction to Marco, telling herself it was merely gratitude or the appeal of his generosity toward Emma. But in quiet moments like these, she could no longer deny the connection building between them, or the impossibility of it leading anywhere. They were from different worlds. Marco's life of private meetings and international dealings had no place for a struggling single mother with mounting medical bills. Whatever this was between them, it had an expiration date. When Marco returned, his expression was troubled. "I have to fly to Tokyo tomorrow. There's a situation that needs my personal attention." "Of course," Olivia said, attempting to sound casual. "We've monopolized enough of your time anyway. Emma and I will be fine." Marco studied her face, sensing the walls going back up. "This isn't goodbye, Olivia. It's just a trip. I'll be back in a week." Olivia nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She'd heard promises before from Scott. Just a guy's weekend, just a business dinner. Just one more chance. All preludes to disappointment. "I want to show you something before I go," Marco said, pulling out his phone. "I wasn't sure when to tell you this, but—" He hesitated. "I had someone look into Scott's whereabouts. Emma deserves to be able to reach her father." Olivia stiffened. "You investigated my ex-husband without telling me?" "I was concerned about Emma," Marco explained. "A child should be able to reach her father in an emergency." "That wasn't your call to make," Olivia said, her voice cooling. "My relationship with Scott, complicated as it is, isn't something for you to manage or fix." Marco realized his mistake too late. In his world, problems were identified and handled efficiently. But human relationships weren't operations to be managed, and Olivia's life wasn't a situation for him to control. "You're right," he conceded. "I overstepped. I'm sorry." The easy warmth between them had evaporated, replaced by awkward tension. As Marco prepared to leave, Olivia stood by the door, arms crossed protectively across her chest. "Safe travels to Tokyo," she said formally. "Thank you again for everything you've done for us." Marco felt the dismissal in her words. "Olivia, don't do this. Don't push me away because I made a mistake." "I'm not pushing you away," she said quietly. "I'm just being realistic. You have a life to get back to, Marco, a life that has nothing to do with us." He wanted to argue, to break through the barrier she was rebuilding. But Emma appeared in the hallway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Are you leaving, Marco?" she asked, disappointment evident in her voice. "Just for a little while, kiddo," he answered, kneeling to her level. "I have to go to Japan for work." "Will you bring me back something with Hello Kitty?" Emma asked hopefully. "Absolutely," Marco promised, his chest tight at the ease with which this child had carved out a place in his life. As he stepped into the hallway, Olivia's voice stopped him. "Marco," she said softly, "we'll be okay. You don't owe us anything." The words felt like a door closing. Marco wanted to turn back, to make her understand that his presence in their lives had nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with the unexpected connection he had found with them. But Olivia's expression was resolute, and he recognized the pride that both frustrated and impressed him. "Goodbye, Olivia," he said instead, the words feeling more final than he intended. Neither realized that forces beyond their control were already in motion, forces that would soon test everything they thought they knew about trust and the unexpected paths that lead to connection. Tokyo in October was a blur of neon lights, careful negotiations, and sleepless nights for Marco Valentini. What should have been a routine week-long trip to smooth over partnership concerns had expanded into complex discussions that demanded his full attention. Despite the 16-hour time difference, Marco found himself checking his phone at odd hours, composing messages to Olivia and Emma, only to delete them unsent. Pride and uncertainty kept him from reaching out. Their last conversation had left a weight in his chest that no business success could alleviate. For the first time in years, closing a significant deal felt hollow, compared to the simple contentment of making pancakes in a tiny kitchen while Emma chatted about her day. Meanwhile, back in Boston, Olivia had returned to work against her doctor's advice. Unable to afford more unpaid time off, the pneumonia had left her weakened, and juggling her day job with evening remote work while caring for Emma drained what little energy she had regained. The hospital bills had started arriving. Despite Marco's assurances that everything was taken care of, the insurance statements showed thousands in remaining patient responsibility. Olivia stared at the latest bill, the numbers swimming before her exhausted eyes. Even with payment plans, there was no way to make this work alongside rent, utilities, and the basics Emma needed. The financial reality was crushing, but it was the silence from Marco that left an unexpected ache. She had pushed him away, preparing herself for his inevitable disappearance from their lives. Men like Marco Valentini didn't settle for women with second-hand furniture and maxed-out credit cards. Yet some small, foolish part of her had hoped he might prove different, might call or text or appear at their door with his quiet presence and genuine interest in Emma's rock collection. "Mom, is Marco ever coming back?" Emma asked one evening as Olivia tucked her into bed. The question hung in the air, weighted with childish hope and adult complexity. "He's very busy with his work, sweetheart," Olivia answered carefully. "Important people like Marco have big responsibilities." "But he promised to bring me something with Hello Kitty from Japan," Emma persisted. "And he always keeps his promises." Olivia smoothed Emma's hair, choosing her words with care. "Sometimes grown-ups make promises with good intentions, but life gets complicated. It doesn't mean they're bad people." "Dad used to say that too," Emma observed with the devastating clarity of children, "before he stopped coming to see me." The comparison to Scott stung. "Try to get some sleep," Olivia whispered, kissing Emma's forehead and retreating to the living room where bills and worries waited. 2 weeks after Marco's departure, as Tokyo negotiations dragged on, Olivia received a certified letter that changed everything. It was from Massachusetts General Hospital, informing her that her entire medical bill had been paid in full by an anonymous donor. The same day her apartment buzzer rang, revealing a delivery person with a large box addressed to Emma, postmarked from Tokyo and containing an elaborate Hello Kitty dollhouse. There was no note, no message, just silent evidence that Marco was still thinking of them. Olivia stood in her living room watching Emma's delight at the unexpected gift, her own emotions a complicated tangle of gratitude, relief, and renewed confusion about the man who had stumbled into their lives. That night, after Emma was asleep, Olivia finally texted Marco. "Thank you for Emma's gift and for the hospital bill. You didn't have to do that." His response came almost immediately despite the time difference. "Both long overdue. How are you feeling?" Such a simple question, yet it opened a floodgate. Soon they were texting regularly, rebuilding their connection across thousands of miles. Marco shared the frustrations of his negotiations, while Olivia confessed her struggles balancing work and recovery. The distance somehow made honesty easier, allowing them to express feelings they might have hidden face to face. 3 days later, Marco called with unexpected news. "The Tokyo situation is finally resolved, but I'm flying to London next, not Boston. There are concerns about our European operations, and I need to handle them personally." Olivia ignored the twinge of disappointment. "That sounds important. Emma will be disappointed, though. She's been telling everyone at school about her friend who travels the world." "Put her on the phone," Marco requested. When Emma's excited voice came on the line, he made her a solemn promise. "I may not be back as soon as I hoped, but I'll video call you every other day to hear about school and see how your rock collection is growing." "Deal?" "Deal," Emma agreed enthusiastically. True to his word, Marco began video calling regularly. What started as brief check-ins evolved into virtual dinner gatherings, with Marco propping his phone in his London hotel room while Emma and Olivia ate at their kitchen table. Despite the physical distance, he became more integrated into their daily lives than ever. During one such call, after Emma had gone to show Marco her latest art project over video, Olivia confessed her growing financial concerns. The medical leave put me behind on everything. I'm picking up weekend shifts at a local cafe to catch up on rent, but it's not enough. Marco's expression tightened with concern. Let me help, Olivia. Not as charity, as a loan if that makes you more comfortable. Loans between friends rarely end well, Olivia said, shaking her head. I'll figure it out. I always do. The conversation shifted to lighter topics when Emma returned, but Marco couldn't shake his worry. After their call ended, he made another to his operations director in Boston, setting in motion a plan he hoped might help without wounding Olivia's pride. 2 days later, Olivia received an email from a company Marco was connected with. They were expanding their customer support team and seeking experienced remote workers who could handle complex service issues. The position offered substantially more than her current evening job, with benefits and flexible hours. The email cited her experience at her current company as the reason for their interest. Olivia stared at the screen, suspicion and hope warring within her. This had Marco's influence all over it. Yet the position was real, the company legitimate, and the work within her qualifications. After a sleepless night, weighing pride against practicality, she applied, went through the interview process, and was offered the position. During their next video call, she confronted Marco directly. Did you arrange this job offer? Marco had the grace to look slightly abashed. I suggested they reach out to qualified candidates. Your experience made you a perfect fit. The decision to hire you was theirs, not mine. So it's not charity, Olivia pressed. It's business, Marco replied. They need good people, and you need work that values your skills appropriately. The fact that it helps someone I care about is a bonus. The phrase someone I care about hung between them, neither willing to examine its implications too closely. As October melted into November, Marco's European obligations extended further, with stops in Frankfurt, Paris, and Madrid. The distance began to feel normal, their relationship existing in the space between time zones and responsibilities. Though Marco never explicitly stated it, Olivia sensed his reluctance to return to the isolated life he'd led before meeting them. In their video calls, he seemed more animated discussing Emma's school projects than his business dealings. Then came the call that changed everything. It was past midnight in Boston when Olivia's phone rang. Groggily answering, she was surprised to hear Scott's voice, her ex-husband, Emma's father, who had barely communicated in months. Olivia, thank God you answered, Scott said, his voice tight with what sounded like panic. I need your help. I'm in serious trouble. Fully awake now, Olivia sat up in bed. What kind of trouble, Scott? Financial trouble. Bad investments, some debts I couldn't cover. I've been borrowing from some people I shouldn't have, he admitted. They're threatening me, Olivia, and my wife left last week when she found out. I'm sorry to hear that, Olivia said carefully, but I don't see how I can help. I barely make ends meet myself. That's not what I hear, Scott replied, his tone shifting. Word is you're cozy with Marco Valentini these days. The Marco Valentini. Olivia froze. How do you know about Marco? Emma mentioned him when I called her last week. Did some research. Quite the catch, Liv. Must be nice. The casual mention of calling Emma, something he hadn't done in months, combined with his insinuations about Marco, sent anger coursing through Olivia. What do you want, Scott? Just a small loan, temporary. $100,000 would solve everything, Scott said as if requesting pocket change. You can get it from your rich boyfriend. Consider it child support makeup. You're unbelievable, Olivia breathed. Marco isn't my boyfriend, and even if he were, I would never ask him for money to bail you out. Scott's voice hardened. Think about it, Olivia. Emma needs her father in her life, not some random guy playing house. Would be a shame if Valentini found out about some of your past indiscretions. Bet he doesn't know everything about you, does he? The threat hung in the air, resurrecting memories Olivia had tried desperately to bury. Before Emma, before marriage to Scott, there had been a darker time. Poor decisions, a misdemeanor conviction from her troubled youth that she'd managed to have expunged, but that Scott knew about in excruciating detail. Are you threatening me? Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Just pointing out reality, Scott replied smoothly. I need money. You have access to it. Easy solution for everyone. After ending the call with a non-committal response, Olivia sat in the darkness of her bedroom, mind racing. Scott's unexpected reappearance and threats complicated everything. If Marco learned about her past, the shoplifting charge at 19, the 60 days in county jail, would it change how he saw her? Would it jeopardize her new position? More importantly, how had her life become so entangled with Marco's that her ex-husband saw him as a source of financial rescue? The boundaries between gratitude, friendship, and deeper feelings had blurred beyond recognition. The next morning, Olivia waited until Emma left for school before making a decision. She would handle this herself, without involving Marco. She had savings, not much, but enough to offer Scott something to keep him at bay until she figured out a more permanent solution. The thought of losing her new job, or seeing disappointment in Marco's eyes, was unbearable. What Olivia didn't know was that Scott had already made another call, immediately after speaking with her, to a number he had obtained through less than legal means. And Marco, still in Madrid but now scheduled to return to Boston within days, was already aware of both Scott Taylor and the threats he'd made. The game was about to change, and none of the players fully understood the stakes. Marco Valentini's private car pulled up to his Boston residence under ominous gray skies that matched his mood. The call from Scott Taylor had awakened something in him, a protective instinct he hadn't known he possessed. Rather than responding to Scott's transparent attempt at extortion, revealing Olivia's past legal troubles while demanding money to keep quiet, Marco had instructed his most trusted associate to compile a comprehensive report on Scott Taylor. The results painted a disturbing picture: gambling debts, failed business ventures, and a history of using Emma as leverage against Olivia. Most concerning was evidence suggesting Scott had been monitoring Olivia's activities, tracking her connections and financial situation like a predator, waiting for opportunity. As he entered his brownstone, Marco debated his next move. The straightforward choice would be to tell Olivia everything immediately about Scott's call, the investigation, all of it. But a more calculated part of him, the strategist who had built his position through careful planning, wondered if handling Scott quietly might spare Olivia unnecessary pain. The decision was made for him when his phone chimed with a text from Olivia. "Need to speak with you urgently. Can we meet tonight?" Marco changed direction immediately, heading to Dorchester without hesitation. When Olivia opened her apartment door, the strain of the past 24 hours was evident in the shadows beneath her eyes and the tension in her shoulders. Emma was already asleep, the apartment quiet save for the gentle patter of rain against the windows. "You're back," Olivia said, surprise momentarily displacing worry. "I thought you were still in Europe." "I finished early," Marco replied simply, following her into the living room. The familiar space, which had once seemed so foreign to him, now felt more comfortable than his own residence. "Your message sounded urgent." Olivia gestured for him to sit, then paced nervously before joining him on the couch. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you weeks ago." Marco waited, giving her the space to find her words. "Before I met Scott, before Emma, I was in a bad place," Olivia began, her voice steady despite her obvious discomfort. "I was 19, working minimum wage, couldn't make rent. I made a stupid decision and shoplifted from a department store, expensive items I planned to resell. I got caught, charged with a misdemeanor, and spent 60 days in county jail." She paused, watching his face for reaction. "I had the record expunged years later, but it happened. I'm not proud of it, but it's part of who I am, part of the journey that eventually led to Emma and a better life." Marco listened without interruption, his expression carefully neutral. When she finished, he asked quietly, "Why are you telling me this now, Olivia?" The directness of his question caught her off guard. Because I value your friendship, because I work for your company now, because I don't want secrets between us." "Is that the only reason?" Marco pressed, his intuition telling him there was more. Olivia looked away, her resolve faltering. "Scott called last night. He's in financial trouble and thinks I can get money from you. He threatened to tell you about my past if I didn't help him." Understanding dawned on Marco's face. "So you're telling me first to take away his leverage?" "Yes," Olivia admitted. "I'm sorry. I should have told you about my record when you offered me the job." Marco leaned forward, closing the distance between them. "Olivia, look at me. When she met his eyes, he continued softly, I already knew. What? Olivia whispered, confusion replacing guilt. After that first night when Emma called and I found you so ill, I had you checked out, Marco explained. Standard procedure when I help someone. The report included your expunged record. Olivia stood abruptly, anger flashing across her features. You investigated me without telling me, just like you did with Scott? Yes, Marco admitted without apology. It's what I do, Olivia. I assess situations, gather information, protect my interests. Is that what we are to you? An interest to be protected? She demanded, hurt evident beneath her anger. Marco ran a hand through his hair in frustration. That's not what I meant. Look, Scott called me too. Yesterday, same story, same threats. This revelation stopped Olivia cold. He called you directly? How did he even get your number? That's not important right now, Marco said, standing to face her. What matters is that he's trying to manipulate both of us, and I won't let him hurt you or Emma. So you'll just handle it, Olivia challenged. Pay him off and make it go away. That's not a solution, Marco. That's a band-aid. I didn't say anything about paying him, Marco replied. There are other ways to handle men like Scott. Something in his tone alarmed Olivia. What exactly does that mean? Marco stepped closer, his expression softening. It means I care about you and Emma more than I expected to, more than is probably wise, and I protect what I care about. The simple declaration hung between them, charged with unspoken implications. For a moment, neither moved. The only sound the steady rhythm of rain against the windows. Olivia broke the silence first. I can't be another project for you to fix, Marco. Another problem for you to solve with your resources and connections. That's not how relationships work. Is that what we have? A relationship? Marco asked quietly. Before Olivia could answer, her phone rang, Scott's number illuminating the screen. With a resigned sigh, she answered on speaker. Scott, this isn't a good time. Time is something I don't have, Liv, Scott replied, his voice tight with panic. My creditors aren't the patient type. Have you talked to your friend yet? I'm right here, Taylor, Marco interrupted, his voice sharp with controlled intensity. Let's skip the games. What exactly do you want? Scott recovered quickly from the surprise. Mr. Valentini, glad to finally speak directly. As I explained to Olivia, I'm in a temporary financial bind. Nothing serious, just a cash flow issue. I thought perhaps we could come to an arrangement. For Emma's sake, of course. Emma's sake, Marco repeated, his tone hardening. The daughter whose calls you ignore, whose emergencies you're unreachable for. That Emma? Watch it, Valentini, Scott warned. That's my child you're talking about. My flesh and blood, not yours, no matter how many expensive toys you buy her. Marco's expression darkened, but Olivia placed a restraining hand on his arm. Scott, she said firmly, there will be no money. Not from me, not from Marco. If you're in trouble, get help, but don't drag us into it. You'll regret this, Olivia, Scott hissed. Both of you will. The call ended abruptly, leaving a tense silence in its wake. He's desperate, Marco observed. Desperate people make mistakes. Olivia sank onto the couch, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. This is exactly what I was afraid of. My past complicating things. Scott causing problems. It's why I tried to keep you at arm's length. Marco sat beside her, close enough to offer comfort but giving her space. Olivia, everyone has a past. Mine isn't as spotless as you might think. The difference is that my mistakes are buried under success and reputation. What would you have done if Scott had gone public with my record? Olivia asked, searching his face. Nothing, Marco replied honestly. A 20-year-old misdemeanor doesn't change who you are now, a remarkable woman raising an incredible daughter against all odds. If anything, it makes your journey more impressive. The sincerity in his eyes broke something open in Olivia's heart, a barrier she'd maintained not just against Marco, but against the possibility of trusting someone again after Scott's betrayal. I'm scared, Marco, she admitted softly. Not of Scott, but of this, us. Whatever is happening between us, it doesn't make sense on paper. We're from different worlds. Marco took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle patterns across her palm. Maybe that's why it works. Maybe we each have something the other needs. The moment was interrupted by a knock at the door, insistent, heavy. Exchanging concerned glances, Marco moved protectively in front of Olivia as she went to answer. Through the peephole, Olivia saw two uniformed police officers. Heart pounding, she opened the door. "Olivia Taylor?" the female officer asked. When Olivia nodded, the officer continued, "We're here about Scott Taylor. There's been an incident." The next hours passed in a blur. Scott had been arrested attempting to flee a high-stakes poker game after being caught cheating. In his desperation, he'd assaulted the security guard who tried to detain him and was now facing serious charges. During processing, he'd named Olivia as a contact for Emma, claiming his daughter was staying with him for the weekend. A blatant lie meant to create problems. By dawn, the immediate crisis had been managed. Marco's connections had helped clarify the custody situation, ensuring that Scott's false statements wouldn't trigger unnecessary child welfare involvement. Olivia, exhausted but relieved, watched the sunrise from her kitchen window while Marco made coffee. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for being here, for helping navigate all this." Marco handed her a steaming mug. "Always." The simple promise contained multitudes. They sat in comfortable silence, the events of the night having forged a new understanding between them. "What happens now?" Olivia finally asked. "With Scott?" Marco clarified. "He'll face charges, but my people will ensure his case doesn't affect you or Emma," Marco assured her. "Not with Scott," Olivia said. "With us." Marco considered the question carefully. "That depends on what you want, Olivia." "I know what I want." "Which is?" she prompted. "More mornings like this," he said simply. "More pancake dinners with Emma. More of you." He hesitated, then added, "I've built a life of operations and obligations, but it took a wrong number at 2 in the morning to show me what I was missing. You and Emma gave me something I didn't even know I needed, a connection that matters more than anything else." Olivia set down her coffee and moved closer to him. "It won't be easy. Our lives are completely different." "They were different," Marco corrected. "They're already intertwined now, whether we planned it or not." "People will talk," Olivia warned. "They'll say I'm after your money, that you're having a midlife crisis." Marco's mouth curved slightly. "Let them talk. We know the truth." As morning light filled the small kitchen, Emma's sleepy voice called from the hallway. "Mom, is someone here?" She appeared in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep, then broke into a wide smile. "Marco, you came back!" She launched herself into his arms with complete trust, and Marco caught her easily, the gesture now familiar and cherished. Over Emma's head, his eyes met Olivia's, a silent question in them. "Yes," Olivia said softly, answering both Emma's observation and Marco's unspoken query. "He came back, and I think he might be staying for a while." 6 months later, Olivia stood on the balcony of a beachfront home in Cape Cod, watching Marco and Emma construct an elaborate sandcastle at the water's edge. The spring sunshine glinted off the engagement ring on her finger, modest by some standards, but perfect by hers, a symbol of the balance they'd found between their worlds. The path hadn't been smooth. Scott's legal troubles had eventually resulted in a plea deal, with Marco quietly ensuring that Emma could maintain contact with her father through supervised visits, while he received help for his gambling addiction. Olivia had excelled at her new position, earning a promotion on merit alone, silencing critics who assumed favoritism. They'd faced scrutiny when their relationship became public, but the novelty had faded when it became clear this wasn't a passing connection for either of them. They'd chosen this middle ground, not Olivia's apartment nor Marco's brownstone, but a new home that belonged to both of them, where Emma's rock collection had pride of place alongside Marco's family photographs. Marco looked up from the sandcastle, catching Olivia watching them. His smile, the real one that reached his eyes, not the measured expression he showed to associates, still made her heart skip. He whispered something to Emma, who giggled and nodded enthusiastically. As they made their way back to the house, sand-covered and laughing, Olivia thought about the strange alchemy of chance and choice that had brought them together. A wrong number at 2 in the morning, a decision to answer a child's plea for help, a whispered "stay" that had changed everything. Marco reached her, wrapping sandy arms around her waist. Emma has declared the sandcastle complete and now demands ice cream to celebrate. Does she now? Olivia smiled, leaning into his embrace. She's very persuasive, Marco replied solemnly. Must get that from her mother. Emma tugged at both their hands. Can we have ice cream and then call Grandma and Grandpa to show them our castle before the tide gets it? Marco's parents, initially cautious about their son's unexpected relationship, had gradually warmed to Olivia and become thoroughly enchanted with Emma, who now considered them bonus grandparents. Absolutely, Marco agreed, exchanging an amused glance with Olivia. Family first, then ice cream. As they walked hand in hand toward the house, Olivia marveled at how naturally Marco had said it. Family. Not a word he used lightly, yet now it encompassed all three of them. A family forged not by blood or obligation, but by the rarest of elements, a choice made night after night to stay when it would have been easier to go. A wrong number that had somehow been exactly right.